I was the designated crown princess. The prince who married me would be the crown prince. But the age-appropriate third prince fell in love with a palace maid and insisted on making her his legitimate wife. To secure his position as crown prince, I opened the side gate and brought the maid into the mansion with the rights of a concubine. That day, as the red rope was hung, the maid hanged herself in the bridal chamber. Years later, when the third prince ascended the throne, he slaughtered my entire family to vent his hatred. When I opened my eyes again, the emperor asked which prince I favored. Under the third prince's gaze, I cowed out and petitioned. Your subject's daughter wishes to marry the sixth prince. I humbly beseech your majesty to grant this marriage. 1. I served as the crown princess for 6 years. Yet I never became the empress. Xiao Yinan granted me the rank of a concubine and then imprisoned me in the cold palace. It was 2 years later when I saw Xiao Yinan again. On that day, General Chu died in battle and the entire nation mourned. Only Xiao Yinan celebrated with music, feasting and drinking. He was heavily drunk and staggered into the cold palace. Chu Yi, after all these years of arrogance, did you ever imagine this day? Chu Xiongtian, that old man, is dead, he's finally dead. I rose coldly from the couch and walked step by step to stand before him. Xiao Yinan froze, pointing at me in disbelief. Chu Yi, what kind of expression is that? The one who died is your father. And you can't even shed a single tear. You truly are cold-blooded. Slap. I slapped him across the face. What expression should I have? Like you, a useless waste, grieving over a palace maid's death while neglecting the entire nation. Xiao Yinan covered his face, glaring at me furiously. What do you know? A venomous woman like you will never be capable of love. What's wrong with avenging Shering, avenging the woman I love? I will slaughter your entire family so you can taste the pain of losing your beloved, just as I did back then. Xiao Yinan cursed as if venting his hatred, but I gradually began to lose track of his words. Walking up to him, that slap had already taken all my strength. Ever since my father died in battle, Xiao Yinan had cut off my food supply. Trapped in this palace, I had gone hungry for 3 full days. I know Xiao Yinan is waiting for me to give in, but I, Chu Yi, have never yielded in my life. The entire Chu family, loyal and righteous, died because of me. How could I continue to live on in disgrace? Xiao Yinan did not notice anything unusual about me. As long as you are willing to kneel before Shi Yuan's grave and admit your mistake, I will take you out of this cold palace, bring you to see the remains of the Chu family, and let you give them a proper burial. A proper burial. That's right, I cannot die just yet. Grandmother, mother, and brother are all waiting for me. I must go back. I suddenly grabbed Xiao Yinan. I agree. I want to return to Chu. A crimson dagger pierced through my heart. Blood trickled from the corner of my mouth as I uttered my last word. Home. My eyes widened in disbelief as I stared at Xiao Yinan. The hairpin clutched tightly in my hand fell to the ground along with me. Xiao Yinan stepped on the hairpin with his foot and sneered, Chu Yi. I knew you were a venomous woman who wanted to harm me. Since you're so ruthless, I have no choice but to send you to meet your Chu ancestors ahead of time. Go to the other side of the Yellow Springs and collect their corpses there. I stared at the hairpin beneath his feet, my eyelids growing heavier and heavier. This hairpin was carved and given to me by Xiao Yinan himself on the Lantern Festival 10 years ago. But he didn't recognize it. Back then, he had said, Little Crescent Moon, I will treat you well for a lifetime. It wasn't like this in the beginning. In the last moment before consciousness faded, the hairpin engraved with a crescent moon snapped. 2 in the blink of an eye, a Little Crescent's comingafage ceremony is over. And it's time to arrange her betrothal. Yet the third prince, at this critical juncture, wants to marry a palace maid as his principal consort. My consciousness slowly returned, and before me, grandmother and mother were conversing. Wait, mother? I suddenly stood up and threw myself into mother's arms, sobbing, Mother, mother, I've missed you so much. Startled by my sudden movement, mother quickly patted my back and whispered soothingly. Grandmother threw her cane to the ground in anger, this third prince has gone too far. Our little crescent moon must not suffer such injustice, yes, since I was appointed as the crown princess. I have never been so out of sorts. Mother and grandmother naturally thought that I was heartbroken by Xiao Yinan. I have come to realize. This must be like what is described in the storybooks. I have been reborn back to the past, back to the year I just turned 16. Having just passed the comingafage ceremony and not yet betrothed. Although I am not yet betrothed, the entire capital has tacitly accepted that the future crown prince is the third prince, Xiao Yinan. And thus has also tacitly accepted that I am engaged to Xiao Yinan. The current emperor and my grandfather were as close as brothers. After my grandfather died in battle at the frontier, my father unwaveringly remained there to guard it. For this reason, before appointing the crown prince, the emperor first designated me as the crown princess. Marrying my prince is the only way to become the crown prince. The eldest prince had no interest in the throne, so he was granted a princedom and married a legitimate princess early on. The third prince and I were born in the same year. In the 5 years following the third prince's birth, the imperial family only added the fourth prince and the fifth princess. The fourth prince died young, not surviving past the age of 1. As for the sixth prince below him, he was a full 6 years younger than me, not to mention the seventh and ninth princes. Thus, everyone believed that the one who would marry me was none other than the third prince, Xiao Yinan. I thought so too. But no one could have imagined that on the day after my comingafage ceremony, the third prince sought an imperial decree to marry his personal maid, Shi Yuan, as his principal consort. The emperor was furious and punished him by making him kneel before the palace for an entire day and night. Yet Xiao Yinan did not back down. He remained steadfast in his determination to take Shi Yuan as his principal consort. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, the palace would soon send someone to summon me. In my previous life, when faced with the emperor's test, I still chose Xiao Yinan. After learning of this, Xiao Yinan came to me smugly. He said he had promised Shi Yuan a proper, honorable marriage and hoped I would step aside and become his secondary consort. Though a secondary consort, my authority would be the same as that of the principal consort. Let me bow to a palace maid. This is absolutely unacceptable. I refused on the spot, treating it as nothing more than a joke. But Xiao Yinan still refused to let it go, urging me to compromise. After being pestered for so long, I lost my temper and, in the name of the crown princess, ordered the side gate to be opened and had Shi Yuan brought into the residence with the rights of a concubine. Unexpectedly, Shi Yuan felt wronged. She hanged herself with a red rope right there in the bridal chamber. It was because of this that Xiao Yinan held a grudge against me and against the Chu family. After he ascended to power, he slaughtered my entire household to vent his hatred. And it all began on that day when the emperor summoned me to the palace and asked, "Little Crescent, among all my princes, which one do you favor the most?" 3 This life, just like the last, the palace sent someone to escort me inside. After entering the hall and paying my respects, the emperor posed this question. I paused, set down the teacup in my hand, and asked in return, "Imperial uncle, am I to choose from among all the princes?" The imperial uncle nodded. "Among all my unmarried princes, Little Crescent may pick freely." I pretended to be shy, covering my face with my hands. Yue hasn't seen the princes in a long time either. Perhaps it's better to meet them first. The emperor uncle let out 2 hearty laughs. That's right, that's right. I was being inconsiderate. Immediately, the chief eunuch by the emperor's side received the order and went to summon the princes. The 6th prince, 7th prince, and 9th prince arrived together as they had just finished their studies at the Imperial Academy when summoned. The 3rd prince arrived the latest, coming in haste without changing clothes, still wearing a simple blue robe. He had likely taken Shi Yuan out of the palace. The 4 princes stood in a neat row, waiting to be chosen. I remained silent for a long time, and His Majesty did not urge me, leisurely savoring his tea. Just as everyone was growing impatient, I stood up and walked over to the 9th prince. The 9th prince was 5 years old at the time, and unlike his elder brothers, he was chubby, fair, and adorable. I took 2 more steps forward, arriving before the 7th prince. The seventh prince was 8 years old, and perhaps because he was growing, he was as thin as a bamboo pole. I did not stop but took 3 more steps, standing between the third prince and the sixth prince. The sixth prince, Shaolin, is 10 years old this year. The youthful outline of his adolescence has not yet completely faded, and there is still a hint of childishness in his brows and eyes. In his previous life, Shaolin volunteered to join the military camp a month after Xiaoyanan and I got married. Later, he went to the frontier. In the letters my father sent back, he often praised him. After reading the family letter, my grandmother only lamented regret that he was born too late. If not for that, he would surely have been the most suitable grandson-in-law for the Chu family. My thoughts wandered, and before I knew it, I had been standing here for a long time. Xiaoyanan couldn't help but speak up. Chu Yue, is it really that hard to make a choice? I set aside the thoughts he had interrupted and stepped back half a pace, standing fully before the sixth prince, Shaolin. Shaolin's face flushed instantly, even the tips of his ears turning crimson. Sister Chu. I responded softly, then turned to face His Majesty directly. Your subject believes that although the sixth prince is still young, he is composed and studious, bearing the demeanor of a future crown prince. Amid the bewildered expressions of the other princes, I knelt without changing my expression and petitioned. Your subject is willing to marry the sixth prince and humbly requests Your Majesty to grant the marriage. For Xiaoyanan was shocked. Chu Yue, have you lost your mind? He pointed at Shaolin in disbelief and said, he's only 10 years old, just a child. I replied coldly, so what if he's 10? It's only 6 years I can wait. The third prince, on the other hand, is already of marriageable age. I hear his principal consort has been chosen. I wonder which auspicious day has been selected. When the time comes, I'll be sure to come and ask for a cup of wedding wine. As my words fell, the emperor, who had been quietly sipping tea, could no longer sit still. He cleared his throat twice. Little crescent moon. Perhaps you've heard some rumors and misunderstood your brother Yanin. Without your approval, how would he dare to take a consort? I still remember when you were little, you were the most clingy with the third prince. Every time you entered the palace, you would follow him. Once, when Yanin wasn't around, you hugged my leg and kept asking, where is brother Yanin? Speaking of this, the emperor paused and sighed softly. In the blink of an eye, you and Yanin have grown up so much. I am old, it is time to appoint the crown prince. I did not respond to the emperor's words right away. When I was young, I did indeed like to cling to Xiaoyanan, but not because I liked him. The first time I clung to him and entered the palace, it was to escape my father and mother. My father was determined to teach me martial arts, while my mother said that learning martial arts would hurt my hands and insisted I learn needlework. In truth, I wanted to learn neither, so I would take refuge in the palace after school, and on my way back home I would sneak some pastries to secretly share with my brother, who trained hard in martial arts. Xiaoyanan thought I loved eating them, so every time I entered the palace, he would have the imperial kitchen prepare some in advance for me to take away. Afraid that I might overeat and get indigestion, he specially ordered a small portion. But for my brother, it was barely enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. So he urged me to go to the palace every day. When did it start to change? It probably began when a palace maid named Shi Yuan appeared by his side. Shi Yuan could make all kinds of novel pastries that had never been seen before, with fresh, unconventional, and imaginative ideas. Among all the palace maids, she was the most special. Perhaps it was these differences that attracted Xiaoyanan. He grew increasingly curious about Shi Yuan, and after several rounds of entanglement, the two quickly developed feelings for each other. It was also at this time that Shi Yuan firmly stated she would never be a concubine, would only accept a phoenix wedding gown, a grand sedan chair carried by 8 bearers, and a proper, formal marriage. Otherwise, she would rather remain unmarried for life and grow old alone. Xiaoyanan did not want to give up Shi Yuan, so he came to persuade me to step aside. Thus began the grudges and grievances of the past life. In this life, I have come to understand that no matter what, I must not wrong myself by marrying Xiaoyanan. The Chu family, I must protect them. 5 My thoughts returned, and I knelt to confess my guilt. Your subject's daughter has always regarded the third prince as an elder brother, never expecting to have caused Your Majesty and His Highness to misunderstand for so long. This is entirely my fault, and I beg your majesty to punish me. The emperor's eyes darkened. Yui, are you truly set on choosing the sixth prince? I lowered my head and said. Yes. Seeing my determination, His Majesty had no choice but to say, in that case, let the Imperial Observatory check the compatibility of your birth charts and pick an auspicious date before drafting the decree. Little crescent moon. You still have a chance to change your mind during this time. Don't let your Imperial uncle down again. His Majesty's attitude clearly showed some dissatisfaction with my choice. My heart sank, but I kept my expression unchanged and bowed my head in gratitude. His Majesty turned his head to look at Shaolin and said, as for the sixth prince, since Little Crescent Moon holds you in such high regard, the matter of this imperial examination will be entirely in your hands. Let me see for myself whether you possess the demeanor of a crown prince. Shaolin stepped forward with a cupped fist salute. Your son will not let your majesty down. The emperor rubbed his forehead and waved his hand. Enough, I am tired. All of you may withdraw. Everyone bowed in unison and took their leave. Once outside the hall, Xiaoyan angrily reproached me. Yui, it's one thing to cause a fuss on ordinary days, but this time you've gone too far, dragging the sixth brother into it as well. Aren't you afraid of making a laughingstock for the whole world? Joke, I repeated the word, finding it utterly ridiculous. Ever since Xiaoyan made a fuss about marrying Shuwei, countless people had been waiting to see me make a fool of myself. I lifted my head to meet Xiaoyan's gaze. Your Highness, Yui will never be a concubine. A secondary consort is still a concubine. Xiaoyan sneered. In 6 years, you'll be old and faded. Who knows if sixth brother will still want you by then. Don't end up making a wedding dress for someone else, only to come up empty-handed. Seeing this, Shaolin quickly stepped forward and stood in front of me. Third brother, you're mistaken. I'm not like you. I will wholeheartedly treat Sister Chu well. Not just 6 years, even 10 years from now, she will be my only wife. Xiao Yenin, however, looked somewhat disdainful. He raised his hand and heavily patted Shaolin's shoulder twice. You talk a good game, but all you really want is the position of crown prince. Still, it's no big deal. It's normal for a young lad to have some ambition. As your elder brother, I'll naturally support you. As for the imperial examinations, the Chu family won't be able to help you with that. If you need anything, little brother, feel free to come to me. With that, he didn't wait for Shaolin's reply and swept away, his sleeves billowing. After Xiaoyan left, Shaolin looked at me with a resolute gaze. Sister Chu, I won't let you down. I will prove myself to Father Emperor. My gaze drifted past him, looking beyond the palace walls. You won't succeed in this matter of the imperial examinations. To put it bluntly, the one above doesn't want you to succeed, so how could you possibly? Shaolin understood what I meant, lowering his head in dejection. He really is just a child. Was I wrong to use him as a shield? Unexpectedly, the next moment, Shaolin lifted his head again, his eyes burning with determination. How will I know if I don't try? Shaolin will never admit defeat. Seeing the light in Shaolin's eyes, I smiled and gently patted his head. Then go for it. Shaolin's face instantly flushed with a rosy hue as he stammered, Sister Chu, I am your future husband. You can't treat me like a child. Seeing him like this, I felt like teasing him. I immediately bowed and said, yes. My husband. Startled by my words, Shaolin stumbled and fled in a panic. Sister Chu, I just remembered I have something to attend to. I'll take my leave now. I chuckled softly as I watched his retreating figure. With such a resilient spirit, Shaolin would surely be a promising talent in military campaigns. No wonder my father had often praised him in his past life. I withdrew my gaze and turned around, looking up at the lofty plaque above. The emperor was ultimately partial to Xiao Yenin. In my past life, I recognized this and chose to endure silently, siding with Xiao Yenin. In this life, though I have switched to Shaolin, going against the emperor's wishes will surely lead to no good outcome. In my past life, Xiao Yenin had only been on the throne for 2 years when he wiped out the entire Chu family. Now that I think about it, the emperor must have long harbored different intentions toward the Chu family and had been preparing to make a move for some time. The Chu family had been loyal and righteous for generations, but in the end, their merits overshadowed the ruler, arousing the sovereign's suspicion. Since that is the case, what harm is there in my Chu family rebelling? That position of Xiaoyan and consider it, why can't I achieve 6 as for the imperial examinations? Xiaolin handled them very well. It was also because of his involvement that many students from humble backgrounds were able to pass this time. However, Xiaoyan could not bear to see Xiaolin succeed. He slandered Xiaolin by framing him in court. He accused Xiaolin of cheating and leaking the exam questions to candidates in advance. The names he mentioned were all from humble families. How could they possibly have had the money to bribe Xiaolin, the emperor, without even investigating? Directly dismissed Xiaolin from his post and placed him under house arrest. After the morning court session, the emperor issued an imperial decree appointing Xiaoyan as the crown prince. Along with the decree, the emperor also sent someone to summon me to the palace. This time, my heart had long grown cold, and I no longer expressed any reluctance. The emperor was satisfied and ordered Xiaolin to be released. After returning from the palace, I informed my grandmother and mother of everything. My grandmother's face turned ashen. I knew from the very beginning that being the crown princess would not be easy. Not a single prince has survived in 5 years. The emperor has been siding with Xiaoyan all along, letting Wei choose. That's all nonsense, just a trick to deceive my long-dead old man. Mother quickly covered grandmother's mouth. Mother, you mustn't say such things, if someone else were to hear. I responded, let them hear. Even if the Chu family rebels, so what? Mother looked at me in shock and hurriedly moved to cover my mouth as well. Grandmother looked at me with a hint of approval in her eyes. Well said, you have some of my spirit. Your father and that brother of yours are just like the old man, they only know loyalty. And when bullied to their doorstep, they just swallow their pride and endure it. Our Chu family commands 1,000,000 troops. Who sits on the throne of the crown prince? Naturally, that's for our Chu family to decide. My mother covered someone's mouth with one hand, nearly frantic. Oh my heavens, do say a little less. The troops are all at the border. I reached out and pulled my mother's hand away. Grandmother, you are mistaken. Mother immediately patted her chest. At least Yue is sensible. Not joining your grandmother in her nonsense. I lifted my gaze and looked firmly at my grandmother. Since our Chu family commands 1,000,000 strong troops, why shouldn't we ourselves take that high seat? The room suddenly fell silent. And mother was so frightened she stood frozen. Grandmother broke free from mother's hand, leaned on her cane, and came before me. Well said, grandmother supports you. Whatever you want to do, go ahead and do it boldly. I was about to respond to grandmother when I saw mother clutching her philtrum and collapsing. Quick as a flash, I caught mother and helped her to the room to lie down. Just as I was about to fetch a doctor, mother woke up and grabbed my hand tightly. Yue, since you were little, all I've ever wanted is for you to live a safe, smooth, and happy life. How could you? My nose tingled with emotion. Mother. But mother gently stroked my face and sighed. Ah, forget it. Do as you wish. I've been holding you back all these years, and you've endured no small amount of grievances. Since the Xiao family has been unjust. Don't blame our Chu family for being unkind. 7 With the permission of the entire Chu family, I let go and acted boldly. But mother was right. Father was stationed at the border with his troops. If he brought the army back, the border would surely fall into chaos. With internal strife and external threats, even if the Chu family took the throne, they wouldn't be able to hold the realm. Just as I was racking my brain for a way to break the curse, an uninvited guest arrived at the mansion. Yuan. The moment Yuan saw me, she knelt down and begged, Miss Chu, I know you don't like Yenin. Just give up the position of crown princess to me and let Yenin and I be together. I paused mid-step as I passed her, then found a nearby chair and sat down. You're right, I don't like Xiao Yenin. But begging me won't do you any good. You need to plead with the current emperor. Besides, you're just a palace maid. You bring no advantage to Xiao Yenin. The emperor will never agree. Yuan broke down. Her legs gave way, and she collapsed to the floor shouting, a palace maid, not good enough. Always the same excuse. Why can't a palace maid be worthy? Chu Yue. Dare you say you have no ambition? Your Chu family commands 1,000,000 troops. Have you never entertained other thoughts? The maid beside me turned pale and was about to step forward to drag Shi Yuan away. I waved my hand, signaling them all to leave. I stood up, walked over to Shi Yuan, and crouched down in front of her. Your ambition is admirable, but ambition alone isn't enough. You said it yourself, Mi Chu family has 1,000,000 strong soldiers. So what do you have? Xiao Yinen's love. I. Shi Yuan was choked by my words and couldn't find a reply. I stood up in disappointment. Forget it. Go back. Becoming Xiao Yinen's secondary consort isn't an insult to you. Shi Yuan suddenly grabbed my leg tightly. No, I can't be a concubine. I'll die. I don't want to die. I want to live. Die from being a concubine? I suddenly recalled my past life. After I brought Shi Yuan into the mansion as a concubine, she died directly in the bridal chamber. Xiao Yinen thought Shi Yuan had hanged herself because she couldn't bear the humiliation. But now, thinking carefully, none of it made sense. If Shi Yuan were just an ordinary palace maid, why would she feel that being a concubine was a disgrace? Why did she insist on being married as a legitimate wife through proper rites? And how could a mere palace maid have so many strange ideas? Could it be that she had been possessed by a spirit? That's right. Since I could be reborn at the age of 15, it's also possible that this palace maid, as described in the storybooks, has been possessed by those ghosts and spirits. I turned around and crouched in front of Shi Yuan again. You are not Shi Yuan. Who are you? A flicker of panic crossed Shi Yuan's face, and her gaze wavered. This servant does not understand what Miss Chu is talking about. Her reaction only confirmed my suspicions. However, whether it was a spirit or a ghost, why would someone die on the spot just for becoming a concubine? This point still puzzled me. But what was clear was that as long as Shi Yuan stood by my side, Xiao Yinen would no longer be a threat. Countless thoughts raced through my mind. But the primary goal was to determine Shi Yuan's stance and mine. I can help you become Xiao Yinen's legitimate wife, but not the crown princess. Shi Yuan was bewildered by my contradictory words. What do you mean? How can I be a legitimate wife without being the crown princess? Could it be? She suddenly paused, her eyes widening. Are you going to support Xiao Lin like before? To pull Xiao Yinen down from his position? I raised an eyebrow and nodded in agreement. Your goal is the title of legitimate wife. And I can help you with that. But if your goal is to be the crown princess. My expression hardened, my presence imposing. Shi Yuan shrank her neck, her eyes suddenly growing vacant. After a long while, she regained her composure. As long as I become Xiao Yinen's lawful wife, I can survive. Miss Chu, our interests don't conflict, we can cooperate. I lifted her chin with my finger. Then let's start by destroying Xiao Yinen. 8 in the blink of an eye, as snowflakes were falling. And winter had arrived in the capital. This year's winter hunt had begun. All the young ladies of the capital would follow along, hoping to catch a glimpse of the heroic young men and select their future husbands in advance. I had never gone before. But this year I begged my elder brother to take me along. Xiao Yinen also brought someone with him, Shi Yuan. After Shi Yuan returned from my place, she softened toward Xiao Yinen and agreed to become his secondary consort. This time during the winter hunt, Shi Yuan expressed her desire to come, so Xiao Yinen brought her along. Xiao Yinen was somewhat surprised to see me then. As if something had occurred to him, he looked at me with a hint of disgust. Chu, what are you doing here? I looked at him calmly and said, I heard that the prize for first place in this year's winter hunt is a phoenix head hairpin. Your Highness, why do you think I'm here? Before Xiao Yinen could respond, Shi Yuan gently tugged at his sleeve. She stood on tiptoe and whispered into his ear, Yinen, I like that phoenix head hairpin too. Xiao Yinen understood her meaning. Shi Yuan rarely asked him for anything, and feeling indebted to her, he held her close and agreed, then issued a harsh warning to me, I will attend this winter hunt, and that phoenix hairpin is mine. I feigned anger, stepping forward quickly to pull Shi Yuan out of Xiao Yinen's embrace. Shi Yuan, who gave you the nerve to compete with me? You're just a concubine, how dare you covet that phoenix hairpin? Shi Yuan let out a startled cry as I grabbed her, quickly shaking off my hand and hiding it back in her sleeve. Seeing this, Xiao Yanin immediately shielded Shi Yuan behind him and coldly scolded, "Chu Yue. I warn you not to go too far." I snorted coldly, flicked my sleeve, and turned to leave. Many noble ladies, upon witnessing this scene, began to murmur among themselves. They said that even before I was married, I had already lost my husband's heart, and that the title of crown princess was merely nominal. I couldn't care less after all. Whether Xiao Yanin would live to marry me was still up in the air. Meanwhile, Shi Yuan, who had followed Xiao Yanin away, secretly opened the note I had slipped to her. On it were only 2 words: white horse. The winter hunt lasted 3 days, with the final tally counting the number of game caught. On the first 2 days, Xiao Yanin ranked first in the hunt after all. No courtier dared to compete for prey that the crown prince had his eye on. On the 3rd day, Xiao Yanin was already confident that first place was his for the taking, because Shi Yuan had casually remarked that it looked good. He switched to a white horse and even changed into a flashy but impractical riding outfit, cutting a dashing and elegant figure. Shortly after entering the forest, the horse began pawing the ground and neighing incessantly, no longer obeying Xiao Yanin's control. It charged recklessly along the mountain path, heading straight into the depths of the mountains. The guards behind Xiao Yanin had no time to catch up. The news of the crown prince's danger spread quickly. The emperor was furious and dispatched 3,000 troops into the mountains to search. It was not until sunset that they found Xiao Yanin and carried him back. I stood at a distance and took a glance. Most of his injuries were from falls. Unfortunately, he didn't hit his head. One unexpected thing was that there were bite marks from a wild beast on Xiao Yanin's leg. Soon, the imperial physician finished the examination. Relying on my status as the crown princess, I openly learned about Xiao Yanin's condition. He wasn't dead, but the leg wound had caused a high fever, leaving him unconscious. Moreover, the injury had reached the bone, and from now on, it was likely that the imperial physician didn't dare say it outright, but everyone understood the implication. I couldn't suppress the smile tugging at my lips, so I had to cover my face and pretend to be sad. Xiao Yanin. As you said in a past life, Chu Yue is a cold-hearted and vicious woman. 10. As soon as I returned to the tent, I saw someone who shouldn't be there. Xiao Lin saw me and cheerfully approached, saying, "Sister Chu." I frowned. "You shouldn't be here. Xiao Lin and I ought to keep our distance, which is why, when we both came to the winter hunt this time, I specifically told him to find an excuse to stay in the capital." Xiao Lin hung his head, looking a bit dejected. "I just heard that something happened to my imperial brother, and I was worried about you, Sister Chu." I didn't speak, just stared straight at him. "Sister Chu, what's wrong? Is there something stuck on my face? I came in a hurry." I interrupted him. "It was you who did it, wasn't it?" Xiao Lin's figure paused, and then the unruly aura around him dissipated. He curled his lips into a somewhat unrestrained smile. "I just sent a little gift to my imperial brother, in return for his guidance during the imperial examinations." As he spoke, seeing my serious expression, he leaned in closer with a playful grin. "Besides, this can be considered a grudge over a stolen wife, don't you think, Sister Chu?" He leaned in close, still only 10 years old, but having shed that obedient facade, there was a hint of aggression about him. Uncomfortable, I pressed my finger against his forehead and turned his face away. "Xiao Lin, clean up the loose ends properly. Don't let anyone find any evidence." Hearing this, Xiao Lin's eyes, which had dimmed from being pushed away by me, lit up again. "Don't worry, Sister Chu. I've cleaned it all up spotlessly. No one will trace it back to us." I adjusted the shawl around my shoulders. "To you, not to us." Xiao Lin clutched his chest, reverting to that childish expression. "Sister Chu, your words really hurt." I ignored him and went back on my own. Indeed, in this palace that devours people, how could a prince without any scheming survive? But so what? Even if Xiao Lin is useful, I still don't want to support him. I'm already tired of being the crown princess. 11. Due to the crown prince's accident, the winter hunt came to an abrupt end. The emperor investigated for a long time but found no culprit, so he had to wait for Xiao Yanin to wake up. I dressed up and went to the palace. Putting on a show for the emperor, I asked for that phoenix hairpin and also managed to get Shi Yuan back. Now that Xiao Yan'an is unconscious and likely to be crippled, the emperor, thinking I still hold a grudge against Shi Yuan, agreed to my request outright to appease me, without worrying whether Xiao Yan'an would be angry when he wakes up. I kept Shi Yuan by my side, firstly because I feared she might go back on her word and expose me, and secondly because as long as Shi Yuan was in my hands, Xiao Yan'an would not act rashly. Xiao Yan'an had been unconscious for 3 days and had yet to wake. Whispers began to spread among the people, rumors that the eldest daughter of the Chu family and the crown prince had incompatible birth charts and were destined to clash. I knew at once that this was Xiao Lin's doing. That very night, I sent a letter ordering Xiao Lin to retract the rumors. The next day, I petitioned the emperor for permission to go to the Guan temple to pray for the crown prince's recovery. Of course, the prayers were a pretense. My true purpose in going to Guan temple was to meet the old abbot, the former imperial advisor. Grandmother had once shown kindness to the imperial advisor, and I intended to use that favor in exchange for a prophetic decree from him. Not long after, the old abbot entered the palace, bearing a prophecy the crown prince would achieve greatness later in life and must not marry before the age of 20. If this was violated, the imperial star would falter and fall prematurely. The emperor had no choice but to order the imperial observatory to recalculate the auspicious time, postponing the wedding to 4 years later. 4 years was more than enough time for the Chu family to recruit troops, amass power, and seize the throne. What was even more coincidental was that as soon as the wedding date was changed, Xiao Yan'an woke up. Even the emperor, who had harbored doubts, could no longer disbelieve. Still, I stayed at Guan temple for another week before preparing to leave. On the day we were about to descend the mountain, we had just reached the halfway point when a loud crash echoed from the mountaintop. Half of the Guan temple had collapsed from the tremor. I was dazed by the shaking, but quickly ordered the servants to go up the mountain and rescue people. Fortunately, we arrived in time. Several Yen monks trapped under the beams were saved, and the site was swiftly cleared. However, this didn't seem like a natural disaster. I voiced my doubts, and the old abbot smiled bitterly, shaking his head. It was my wayward junior disciple. Every day he rambles on about alchemy. No matter how much I tried to reason with him, he refused to change. So I had to lock him up. But who knew that this morning he would escape again to practice alchemy, and the furnace exploded. If Miss Chu hadn't arrived in time. So that was it. The explosion of the alchemy furnace had such tremendous power. Before I could think further, Shi Yuan exclaimed in surprise, "Explosives, this is explosives." I shot her a glare, and she quickly composed herself, swallowing her words. I then turned to the old abbot and explained, "This maidservant of mine is a bit scatterbrained. Please forgive her, abbot. Since that's the case, why not let my accompanying physician tend to the injuries of the masters here?" The old abbot clasped his hands together in gratitude. Only when we were out of earshot did I allow Shi Yuan to continue. According to her introduction, this substance called explosives possessed immense power. Once manufactured, it could be detonated at will by controlling the heat. If such a powerful item were developed and used on the battlefield, it would be a tremendous advantage, capable of matching 1 against 10, or even 1 against 100. I made up my mind immediately. I have a farm on the outskirts of Beijing. I will send people to guard it strictly. Shi Yuan, this matter is now in your hands. Shi Yuan accepted the order, her face flushed with excitement, her brows dancing with enthusiasm. Fearing she might still be thinking of Xiao Yan'an, I patted her shoulder, ready to offer a few words of advice. But before I could speak, Shi Yuan said, "I understand what Miss Chu means. I don't want to rely on Xiao Yan'an. That was just a matter of circumstance before. Now, I'm quite satisfied. I haven't memorized any formulas in my head, but I'm more than capable of assisting the master in research." After saying these words, she dashed off in a flurry, not caring whether I understood or not. When she came to me, she would sometimes call herself this servant and sometimes I. After realizing I didn't mind, she never referred to herself as this servant again. Later, I thought about it. Shi Yuan was probably not some ghost or spirit, but rather a person from another world. Perhaps, as she had shown, in another time and space, there existed a place where everyone was equal. 12 Xiao Yenin had been recuperating from his injuries, and I didn't see him again until a month later. He came to the Chu residence, demanding that I hand over Shi Yuan. He threatened me, saying that if I did anything to her, he would never let me or the Chu family off the hook. With his words, the scenes of my father dying on the battlefield in my past life and my entire clan perishing because of me replayed before my eyes. I gritted my teeth and swallowed my anger, summoning Shi Yuan back. When Xiao Yenin saw Shi Yuan, he wanted to take her away. Relying on the fate decreed by the national diviner, I petitioned the emperor and managed to keep her here. Moreover, if Xiao Yenin wished to enter the residence to see Shi Yuan, he would first have to pay 10,000 taels of silver for a visit. If he didn't pay, anyone could enter the Chu residence, except for the crown prince himself. Xiao Yenin had no choice but to pay up. Later, I happened to hear from Shi Yuan about a type of food called hot pot. In fact, our dynasty already had the practice of boiling meat in a copper pot, but what she described something called heidalo emphasized service as paramount, which could also be used to make money. So I used the money Xiao Yenin had paid to open such a restaurant. Unexpectedly, as it developed, it became the largest establishment in the capital. Finally, there was a way to gather funds for recruiting troops and buying horses. Recently, there has been some progress in the development of explosives on the outskirts of the capital. Everything is moving in a positive direction. As soon as the formula is successful, I will immediately find someone to deliver it to father by swift horse. But then, who would be suitable to deliver such an important item? On this day, I secretly returned from the outskirts of the capital, and a figure slipped into my carriage. I took a closer look and realized it was Xiao Lin. "What are you doing in my carriage?" Ever since I discovered that beneath his fair exterior, he was all black inside, Xiao Lin had stopped pretending in front of me. I came to see my imperial sister-in-law, to catch up, and to have a little secret affair. I shot him a glare and lifted my foot to kick him out of the carriage. Xiao Lin dodged swiftly, then leaned back and sat down to the side. The carriage fell silent. After a long moment, Xiao Lin said, "Sister Chu, I plan to petition the emperor to join the army." Hearing this, I was taken aback. In my previous life, Xiao Lin had also gone to the frontier to join the army around this time. "Why do you suddenly think of this?" Xiao Lin didn't directly answer my question. There's been quite a stir on the outskirts of the capital lately. Though others haven't paid it any mind, I naturally care about Sister Chu, and that's how I uncovered the secret behind it. I had barely uttered a single word when Xiao Lin covered my mouth, cutting me off. "I'm not here to provoke you, I'm here to cooperate. I have no interest in that position. My father is mediocre, and my elder brother follows in his footsteps. Over the years, we've only managed to hold the borders thanks to Uncle Chu's efforts defending without daring to attack. The state of Xiao is declining day by day." I pried Xiao Lin's hand away and glared at him angrily. At such a young age, he already dares to be so Hansiwo knows what kind of scoundrel he might turn out to be. Xiao Lin casually took my handkerchief and wiped the lip balm stuck on his hand. "So, why don't we do it together? Whether you take the high seat while I conquer the land, or I take the high seat while the Chu family conquers the land, either way, it's a good outcome, isn't it?" I admit, I was a bit tempted. But there was still a risk if Xiao Lin turned against me. Then I would surely. Xiao Lin saw my hesitation and shrugged. "Don't worry. I'll guard the border for Uncle Chu. I promise I won't set foot in the capital until I come of age. The Chu family can do whatever they want." I raised an eyebrow slightly. "And after you come of age?" Xiao Lin waved the handkerchief in front of me. "Once I come of age, I will surely fulfill the marriage contract and come to take Sister Chu as my wife." I reached up to snatch the handkerchief, but Xiao Lin dodged and tucked it directly into his chest. Failing to grab it, I angrily lifted my leg to kick him again. "Who has a marriage contract with you?" Xiao Lin, however, took the opportunity to jump off the carriage. "Sister Chu, how cruel-hearted you are. Lin has always remembered that day in the hall, when Sister Chu stood unwaveringly and knelt to beg His Majesty to grant a marriage to the sixth prince. As he spoke, he shook the handkerchief in his hand. Consider this a token of love. Little crescent moon. Wait for me to return and marry you. Xiao Lin mounted the horse held by the attendant beside him and galloped away into the distance. As if knowing I was watching him, he raised a hand in farewell. I let the carriage curtain fall and lowered my gaze, murmuring, "So disrespectful." But Xiao Lin was trustworthy. As for who would marry whom 6 years from now, that was far from certain. 14 after Xiao Lin volunteered to join the army, Xiao Yan'an once again became active in the court. Though his leg was impaired, with no other princes vying for the throne, he naturally thrived. On the night of the Lantern Festival, I happened upon Xiao Yan'an of the Fu clan on the street. He pulled a hairpin from his sleeve. "Little crescent moon, I carved this hairpin myself. As my crown princess. No one else will affect your position." Seeing the familiar hairpin, a sharp pain pierced my heart, the very spot where a dagger had struck me in my past life. Perhaps it was the sight of this hairpin that brought back the memories. I accepted it, using it as a constant reminder to stay vigilant. But when I returned to the residence and saw Shi Yuan, she too produced a hairpin almost identical in design, save for the different characters engraved on it. Shi Yuan's mood was unusually low. Xiao Yan'an has even begun to be perfunctory with me. I ordered 10 gold hairpins to be brought and placed before her. "Whatever you desire, you can obtain on your own. What Xiao Yan'an gives is nothing to covet." Shi Yuan immediately perked up. "Right. I'll head to the tavern right now and teach the waitstaff a new dance." Though I couldn't understand her words, seeing that she had stopped dwelling on Xiao Yan'an, I felt relieved. 15 in the blink of an eye. For years had passed, and the day of my wedding to Xiao Yan'an had finally arrived. On that day, the streets were adorned in red for miles, and the entire imperial city was abuzz. Xiao Yan'an, dressed in wedding attire and wearing a golden crown, rode a large red horse, surrounded by a procession of guards and maids heading toward the Chu residence. I wore my wedding dress, clutching the hairpin given to me by Xiao Yan'an in my hand. The entire palace was draped in red silk, with red cloth covering the ground. I thought to myself, red does not resemble blood. Striking during the wedding feast would be perfect. The auspicious hour arrived, and my sedan chair was carried into the Eastern Palace. Xiao Yan'an took my hand and led me into the main hall. The emperor sat on the high throne, repeatedly calling out in praise. The next moment, the clash of weapons erupted. The Chu family, who had escorted the bride, had made their move. I abruptly lifted my red veil and pressed the hairpin in my hand against Xiao Yan'an's neck. The emperor instantly realized what was happening and roared, "Excellent, the Chu family is plotting rebellion." I chuckled lightly and said, "With this man by my side, what does rebellion matter?" The emperor panicked and hastily called for his guards. But father had already led his troops into the palace, and there was no one left to save the emperor. My elder brother cleared the way ahead for me. This rebellion, waited for 4 years, was finally coming to an end. The Chu family had always enjoyed popular support, so the transition of dynasties went very smoothly. The only hitch was that some stubborn old ministers were quite dissatisfied with my ascension. They were more inclined to support my elder brother as emperor, which scared him so much that he fled from the imperial kitchen where he was overseeing pastries, declaring he would go on an inspection tour of Jiangnan and not return to the capital anytime soon before leaving. He even took a young kitchen maid with him. A kingdom cannot be without a ruler for even a day. The ministers had no choice but to reluctantly urge me to take the throne. I became the first female emperor in history. As for Xiao Yan'an, I had his tendons severed and sent him to Shi Yuan. Shi Yuan didn't mind and, with the unconscious Xiao Yan'an in tow, went through with the wedding ceremony. But when Xiao Yan'an woke up again, he clamored that something was wrong. He claimed that he himself was the emperor and wanted to see me. Of course, I didn't go to see him. I guessed that he, like me back then, had also been reborn. He shouted for a few days until Shi Yuan couldn't hold back and gave him a few slaps. "What are you babbling about? Didn't you say you love me? Isn't this exactly what you wanted?" Xiao Yinan was utterly dejected. No, I should be the crown prince, and I am the emperor. Shi Yuan, furious, slapped him twice more. You're a lowly slave now, a slave, only I saved you. Only I treat you well. I spent tens of thousands of silver taels to rescue you, so you need to love me more and treat me better. That's it. Since I don't know what else you're good for, I'll have you wash my clothes for a few days first. Xiao Yinan widened his eyes and pointed at himself. You want me to wash your clothes for you? Shi Yuan gave him another kick, and the two stared at each other for a long time. Xiao Yinan gritted his teeth and reluctantly agreed. He limped off with a bucket to do the work. However, that day he tore several pieces of clothing and was scratched by Shi Yuan again. Shi Yuan kept her initial promise, keeping a tight watch on Xiao Yinan, giving him no chance to clear his name. Of course, I also sent quite a few people to keep an eye on him. Gradually, as Xiao Yinan spent more time with Shi Yuan, he toned down some of his domineering arrogance. Mainly because he couldn't withstand her scratching or her punches. He only felt that Shi Yuan had tricked him back in the palace long ago. She had been an innocent and gentle, comforting flower. Shi Yuan always had all sorts of peculiar ideas and inspirations. Since she wasn't suited for the court without proper decorum, I granted her the position of a 7th-rank female official. She tinkered and experimented among the common folk and indeed achieved quite a few accomplishments that benefited the people. Later on her birthday, after she got drunk, she finally revealed everything. As I had suspected, she was indeed a person from another world. Brought here by something called a system. That system demanded that she become the lawful wife of Xiao Yinan, the favored son of destiny, which explained all that had happened. After she completed her task, the system unlocked some rewards. And it was with these that she developed those inventions. After I ascended the throne, I abolished the imperial harem and promoted monogamy throughout the nation. As a result of this policy, more and more wives stepped out of their homes, began to no longer rely on their husbands, and established their own careers. The status of women gradually began to rise. 17 years later, I had just finished the morning court session and was about to crawl back to bed for a second round of sleep, a habit I picked up from Shi Yuan. Suddenly, I heard exclamations from outside. Before I could order someone to investigate, the door was kicked open. The newcomer was clad in a flowing red gold-trimmed armor, holding a long spear in hand. His figure was tall and sturdy, the youthful aura long gone, replaced by a hardened, battle-forged temperament. It was Xiao Lin, whom I hadn't seen in 6 years. He pulled an embroidered handkerchief from his bosom, a smile in his eyes as he turned to me. Little crescent moon. This general has come to marry you. I curled my lips. So disrespectful. That handkerchief had been kept for 6 years, washed until it was somewhat faded. Yet the two characters Yue in the lower right corner remained as vivid as they were 6 years ago. Xiao Lin leaned his spear diagonally against the doorframe, lifted the hem of his robe, clasped his fists, and knelt down. Your subject, Xiao Lin, willingly offers himself in marriage to the Emperor of Chu, and humbly requests your Majesty's blessing for this union. I curled my lips. I grant it. 18 a year after the marriage, Xiao Lin once again led the troops into battle, aiming to unify the realm. This campaign took only 5 years. From then on, the world was unified, and there was no more war. Thus, later records state that during the reign of the Empress, the nation was prosperous and the people were at peace, truly making her a wise ruler of her generation.